I'll be honest, I don't enjoy visual novels. If you don't know, a visual novel is a video game genre that tells a story through an interactive storyline, primarily through text. It's commonly more associated with dating sims. Most gamers criticize this genre because you don't really play the game. It mostly behaves like a book, and I hate books. The way in which visual novels can be made interesting and make it stand out is that it contains an interesting and distinct art style, intriguing storylines, well-defined characters, and a unique soundtrack. And I don't think this is needed, but I think this helps a lot, being in this different story genre. Romance has been done to death, but making it into, let's say, a horror visual novel stands out quite a lot if it's done correctly. One of the best examples would be Doki Doki Literature Club, a game where it deceives the player into thinking you're playing a dating sim, then it goes all fuckery. DDLC is an amazing game and executes its purpose so well. The game had frightening moments, which is amazing to see in a visual novel. However, this is not the game I want to talk about. This is Milk Inside a Bag Inside a Bag. It was developed and written by Russian musician and visual novel writer Nikita. He was born on February 14, 1997 in Russia. He started to learn music at the age of 7 and graduated from university in 2020 as a sound producer. During this time, he started to get involved in the game development around 2018, and he would release his project Daiku no Medium. To summarize it, Daiku no Medium is about 3 characters, Captain Lazarus, first mate Anna, and second mate Joseph, who are traveling inside the Lilith and trying to reach Eden. However, things go haywire. One of Nikita's specialties is to shock the reader with visual distortion or shocking imagery through suspenseful dialogue and aligning soundtrack. The style fits the mold of the NES style pixel art, an art style that has been oversaturated in recent years, but accompanies it very well with the type of subject matter Nikita wants to tell. The story is very dark in a lot of ways, especially towards Captain Lazarus, a mature commander who still appears to be suffering from grief and schizophrenia. Because we are in the perspective of Captain Lazarus, it's harder to distinguish what is real or not. The story can get complex, and I did get confused at some points, especially towards the end, where it's not very clear what it is, but I think it's mostly up to interpretation as to the true meaning. I won't spoil much, but it won't take that much time as it's only 40 minutes and it's free, so why not? His second project that was in development was Deciphering no Medium. However, despite having a trailer, it seemed like it would be cancelled for unknown reasons, although you can still listen to the original soundtrack. He moved on to his next project titled Milk Inside a Bag Inside a Bag, which was developed for 3 days for a game jam. Released on August 26, 2020 and published by Missing Calm and Nikita Productions, Nikita's own studio. Full disclaimer, I am spoiling the entirety of Milk Inside a Bag, so if you haven't played it already, I would recommend it, but with that out of the way, let's start with Milk Inside a Bag Inside a Bag. When you open the game, you are greeted with "Help me buy milk." Without any hesitation, you choose OK. Before the game starts, you must write down your name. This doesn't really affect the story, but funny enough, if you re-enter your name after one playthrough, the game will question you. The game opens up with "I'm on my way to the store, rehearsing the speech." So we're in the perspective of someone who's most likely socially awkward. The image above the text is very difficult to decipher, but judging by the opening screen, it's most likely a store. We are then given 2 options: who are you talking to, and shop and go. The protagonist is aware that you, the player, exists in their minds at least. The comments on how they treat their life as a video game, more specifically a visual novel type game. This breaks the 4th wall to the player, which is a common occurrence in Nikita's work. The visual style as well could represent what the protagonist sees, which has an NES style graphic, similar to one we saw on Daiku no Medium, but that's where the similarities end. The color scheme is more towards pink, a color that symbolizes positivity, with love, kindness, and femininity. However, a negative connotation can be weakness or inexperience, and a tendency to get overly emotional. We definitely see a lot of these attributes in the protagonist. In the beginning, we see them trying to practice talking and having issues trying to get into the store. We as the player must try to correct her and make sure that she's safe, even teaching her how to walk properly. With enough encouragement, we are entered the store. However, we're not in the milk section yet, so we ask someone, and this is possibly the protagonist's mind and reinterpreting what they see, and from the looks of it, they see this person as a long, skinny, two-headed creature. This can be a clear sign of someone suffering from psychosis, a symptom in which a person has trouble understanding what is real and what is not. The creature keeps on repeating "oh," a word that scares the protagonist strangely, and we get to see why. The whole is quite hard to understand. It deprives of anything really. But there's something sus about it, how it gets closer to you and what leads into the hole. It's a scary image to think about. You don't really know what's beyond the hole, and your mind plays tricks into thinking that what could be there. It gives a wider perspective of the protagonist's fears. After the protagonist repeats what the creature says and then reaffirms that, hey, I know I'm in a visual novel, we find the milk section. The image is easy to understand, but it still looks like a bundle of pixels. What event could have happened that would distort the way in which the protagonist looks into this world? Once you grab the milk, which confusingly is inside a bag, we head to the cashier. And he's also reinterpreted as a weird looking creature. However, the dialogue, whilst more strict, is more understanding than the last one, which helps to tell that this is a cashier in the real world. Once 2 days have fucking passed, the protagonist gives the money to the cashier. As we're walking away, they reminisce about the times when they have to go to physical therapy. However, they don't seem to take the world seriously anymore, and it comes to us that this is our goal. Make sure nothing bad happens to them. However, some of our dialogue choices gets weird. It's either reassure or just expose them to the truth. If you keep trying to tell them that all this was in the head, and them denying it, you get this. You're sent back to the naming screen. In order to try to get to the end of the game, you must protect them, or her now since we know that it's a go. As we reach the traffic lights, suddenly she breaks the fourth wall again, saying that she wants to see the person that's controlling everything, which is you. We are transported into what looks like her mind. This is the only section where we can actually talk to her. I like the different responses. You see me trying to answer her question and failing badly. We see her talk about her condition and how she created you in order to keep her company. We are then shown another image. This time she allows us to guess what it is. It's her dad. She describes the aftermath of her dad's death and how the drugs she's been prescribed have not been working, but she's thankful that she created you even if it's temporary. However, you still have a job to do. Getting her back home. Even what you say might be hurtful, you have to. We then walk towards the hall, similar to the one we have seen before. This is the only path to home. This suggests how going home is like taking a leap of faith. It takes a lot of encouragement and effort to do so. This is at a point where we disappear as the pills take effect. This is her mom. She wants to know about her day. And that's it. That's the only ending you get. Now, I would say more, but that's as much content as you get. Keep in mind though that this game is around $5, with only additional content being the soundtrack, which is a whole nother thing I want to talk about. But overall, I really like this game. The art style stands out as being the most unique in the visual novel space. Great characterization of the protagonist, and that amazing feeling where you're left with so many questions in your head. That's the genius part about Nikita's work. It's always stuck in your head after you play the game. Despite the positive reviews coming from Steam, he wasn't proud to show it up because it wasn't the style he wanted to make as a game developer. This encouraged Nikita to create one of his most well-known projects, Milk Outside of a Bag, Outside of a Bag. Released on December 16, 2021, the second visual novel is a big step up to the first one. Unlike the last game, this had a way bigger development time, apparently spanning over a year. This is due to many factors, mainly not having enough funding for artwork, and at certain points doesn't know what direction he would take. However, this didn't deter him from this project. In a recent interview with the original Sound Chat, he stated that all artistic choices I made in Milk 2 were determined by the fact that I personally saw the sequel not as a game, but as a place you can visit and stay for however long you want to talk to the protagonist, listening to the radio. Just do nothing while the music is planting and in the background slowly moving. I understand that visual novels aren't supposed to make you do that, quite the opposite. They urge you to progress the story and not get distracted. But I wanted to make something different in the genre I've been working with for a while now before on to new genres and engines. Now, what a sequel should do, in my opinion, is not only expand its story from the first game, but introduce new elements into the sequel that makes it stand out from the original. And Milk Outside achieves that successfully with its first edition, the animated cutscenes. This is what reality looks like outside of who I'm going to refer to the protagonist as Girl in her mind. The world itself looks normal yet bland, but the girl is frightened by this world. It's a recap to the previous game, and I love the stark contrast between both perspectives, showing that what event happened to her destroyed her perspective of what appears to be a normal city environment. When we see her, she looks terrified, lining up, paying for the milk, opening the front door had become a struggle for her. Once she reaches the front door, this happens. We see dark figures forming around the girl as she continues to walk, aware of her situation. The next frame shows us a hallway leading to a door, so we can kind of interpret that this is a continuation of where the first game left off. She has become more frightened and overwhelmed by the presence. Once she opens the door, we see a familiar face. It's her mom, although we can see how disfigured and gross she is. The mom grabs hold of the girl and injects her with what I presume to be milk, which the girl considers poison. She becomes more distressed and the mother keeps pinning her and yelling at her to never drink milk. Before I continue on, I feel like I should mention one element of both games that are exceptionally well, and that's the soundtrack. In the first game, the soundtrack was limited but memorable. They fit in with the girl's feelings. The song could go from eerie and nauseating to heavenly and calming. They have their own distinct placement in the game and it helps to become associated with the scene. There were 6 songs with 5 bonus songs for the extended soundtrack in Milk Inside. Nikita will also release an hour-and-a-half long Nightmare mix, and it is incredible. I love it. I don't want to talk much about it as it's not in the game, but go listen to it. Now for Milk Outside, it is 4 hours long, but it's honestly one of the best soundtracks I've heard. It's much more of an extension of Milk Inside soundtrack, but the scope, the instrumentals, and the themes just feel wider and expressive, and it is amazing. There's a clear sense that Nikita and the other composers care so much about elevating the sequel soundtrack. Even without the context to the songs associated with the scene, each song still works individually, and I love it so much. There's one part of the extended soundtrack that I want to talk about later on when I get into the game. We see her brushing her teeth after reaching home, and through the mirror we see a clear view of what she looks like. She appears like she's ready to go to bed. In the next frame we see an extreme close-up of her pills. If you haven't noticed already, the girl's surroundings are quite distressing. The imagery changes around every playthrough, so either you get an undistinguishable bundle of pixels, or in this frame, an odd outline of her face. Going back to the pills, we see how she doesn't understand what they do. It becomes a routine to take them, but why does she take them? She's always curious about them, and from what we know, at least, one of the pills gets rid of the voices in her head, aka the player. She looks through one of them and then gets rid of it. The next one she figures out to be sleeping pills, but she doesn't want to sleep because she has something going on. Anyway, throw the normal pills away unless you want to look like this. In the end, she throws away all the pills, and she feels like she accomplished something. We are then teleported to her room where she happily greets the player. We are given multiple choice answers like from the previous game, except this time they are less important to the story. A thing I want to point out is that the layout is more familiar to the visual novel genre. You have the dialogue options, the character sprite, and a text box that the character speaks in. Although we have more choices to say, we still have the same attitude of whether we are nice or mean to her. Once we are talking to her, the girl starts to cry because we say that she's pathetic, which could encourage her to get rid of the player, but because of how lonely she is, we stick around. As we reappear back to the bathroom, she comments on how she hears voices in her head, a clear sign of psychosis happening. She clears her mind by counting in pyramids. We try to reassure her to not blame herself, but she continues to hate herself. Back to the sink, we question her about the pills, and she describes how the pills kinda help, but the pain gets worse, so she wants to stop talking about them. But there are no other options. She has to take them in order to feel normal. She's now laying on the floor, looking up at the ceiling. Her mind is still messed up, thinking about the way she can. We try talking to her, but she's not in the mood and she wants us to be quiet. As we go to her perspective, looking up at the ceiling and contemplating the pills she took, she starts to visualize her thoughts as fireflies buzzing around her room. However, she starts to get overwhelmed and screams at them. When you confront her about her behavior, she ignores the issue, but starts to think, is it a problem? Without talking, she seems to come around to accepting that she might have a problem and wants us to keep talking to her as the quietness is uncomfortable for her. She seems like she's ready for bed, but before she can even do that, she has to find the fireflies first. And of course, we gotta help her out. However, something came to mind and asks her, what were you thinking while you were laying down? She seems confused and asks, why are you asking? Then we ask, that's the thing. I have no idea. This is weird. Now I think she's nervous talking about it, so we move on. We are then teleported to an unfamiliar location. We are given two options to speak. Her voice is distorted and frightened. Another dialogue option pops up. This time they are different. Do you drink milk? Or did he drink milk? She starts rumbling about, purging her eyelashes out over and over again. What have you done? What if she drinks milk? Then everything will. This is where you get your first achievement, first death. Now, Milk and Sight didn't really put an emphasis on achievements. There were really only 3 and don't really mean much since you can just get them from playing your first playthrough of the game. But for Milk Outside, there are 10 achievements that encourage the player to play more than once because there are multiple endings. There are 5 different endings depending on a few factors that we'll get into later. We return to the girl's room. She knew what she experienced was death, but brushes it off. She suggests we should find the fireflies, but on the condition that we shouldn't move anything into her room. And when we try to ask why she gets nervous, I think this is her way of wanting everything to stay the same, with no changes, probably because of how much her room means a lot to her. It will be a pain for us to find, but what other options do we have? However, she has an idea to make our lives better, I suppose. She suggests turning into a point-and-click adventure game, and to make it more interesting, she decided to include the regular items she uses often as a way to interact. I really like this. It gives more characterizations of her personality and what she's like. She's very childish and nerdy, but she's still very timid and scared sometimes, and she's relatable in some sense to a lot of people that play this game. I think that's why a lot of people are fascinated by the girl. Obviously we hate this, but we don't have a lot of options. As we continue to talk, one of the fireflies appears on the floor. She picks it up gently and the firefly goes into her ear. Okay, man. Now we get a chance to see everything in her room. From here on out, it behaves mostly like a normal point-and-click adventure game, trying to find certain highlighted items that help progress through the game. Some of them are pretty simple to find if you have been following what's happening in the story, and some items are quite difficult to find, but not impossible. And yes, this is a vital part of getting the endings. Now, I only point out that ones that will help to give more context as to her conditions and how she became this way. Here, there are notebook notes on her wall. It's about her dosage and side effects of the pills. And seemingly, it was written by her mom. She doesn't seem to care about it too much. However, a firefly appeared out of the pages. Next, we click on the school bag. When we ask about how was school for her, she seems like she enjoyed herself, which I mean, come on now. Nobody likes school. She describes she enjoyed herself at school, but we still don't believe one thing: her graduation. So we ask about her last day. She tells us that her dad picked her up early from school, stating that she doesn't need the school curriculum, went back home, be greeted by her mom, and had dinner. But as we remember before, she's always hesitant to say the truth, so we ask again. She then said her father wanted her to grow up, which doesn't seem right. Why would he say that unless the girl did something? She then added how her dad dragged her out of school while she was biting and scratching. Although she starts to beg not to keep going, we aren't having it, and we tell her to say it again. Her dad picked up some milk, and her mom wasn't home again. A firefly appears and the achievement pops up: "You're annoying." As we look for the items we choose from, we notice that one of the items isn't working. And that's the milk cartons. The next one I clicked is the laptop. It had been untouched for quite a while now. We ask about it, and she expresses how one of her parents brought it into her room. It seemed like she made a lot of friends with the old dial-up internet. Seemingly, she starts to drift away from the main point, which could suggest she might be hiding something from us. Then, finally, we get an answer. Someone tricked her. Into what? What happened? Was that the reason she stays away from the laptop? Whatever happened surely damaged in a way that makes her stay away from the internet, which is really distressing and something that is a very sad occurrence on the internet. The reason for her to stay away from the internet is to not think about what happened to her, and she tries to negate it by talking about different topics. It really makes us look like dickheads at that point, as it's probably traumatic for her. However, she does promise that she'll continue the story, and this is where you get your next Firefly and achievement. Please forget it. As we continue to look around the room, clicking on different objects with nothing special happening, you're given the option to stop searching. Now, in the beginning, thought I was finished looking around for the Fireflies, but as it turns out, it was just the minimum amount to move to the next scene, which will affect the ending. Speaking of endings, there are many factors to take into consideration, such as how many Fireflies you collect, going to the balcony, or going to sleep first, going through the strangulation cutscene, and strangely getting her phone. Now, I'm not considering that a phone, but whatever. Now, on your first playthrough, you would have to go through a mandatory ending, but afterward, you would have to figure out what input you need, which is probably the worst aspects of the game. It's really repetitive to try and error if you don't have a guide with you. Then you're most likely going to get the same ending, and if you didn't save at the spot where you began your point and click adventure, then you have to go through all the dialogue with no option to skip. And I want to blow up as I try to click through as fast as possible so I can get the footage I need. Yes, I was pretty damn mad about it. Anyway, continuing on the search for the Fireflies, we click on the pills. However, something doesn't seem right. Music is more disjointed and eerie than before, and the girl seems distressed, although she did calm down and another Firefly appeared. The last Firefly you find in her room is in the sketchbook. Half of the sketchbook's pages are still empty, despite her mentioning that she likes to sketch. She said that if she uses it too much, then she can't get a new one. We ask her about her mom, but she again avoids this main topic. We ask her again, and she's being more of a smartass, most likely wanting to avoid the conversation about her mother. As she flips the pages of her notebook, she closes her eyes, not wanting to see them. We keep on asking to open them, and once she does, another Firefly appears. Great, you found all the Fireflies. and I think it deserves a break, so why not we take the advice from Nikita and listen to the radio? And this is my favorite part of Milk outside of a bag. In the room, there are 3 radios, with each of them containing around 12 songs. They contain very disturbing and atmospheric music that makes you feel uncomfortable, especially in a room you are alone in. It really illustrates more of the girl's distorted mind and how she listens to the radio as a bundle of deprived sounds. Lawyer Ones that actually contains someone speaking as Radio 112, and it is as creepy as she can interpret, as we are still inside the perspective of the girl. It's most likely a musical performance in the radio, and knowing that there was once a normal version of the song. Some of it seems like they are taken from general news and speeches. Or atmospheric noises that would play in the radio. Other songs like Radio 2-4 are just unbearable to listen to. But there are songs that just can't be explained. And there's more. Thankfully, there are songs that are much more calming and relaxing to listen to. Showing that there could be a chance of her innocence still there. Although difficult, it's not impossible to get her back. I love the feature of the radio, and goes to show that you can tell a person if you can take the time and pay attention to what's happening around her, with something that isn't realized from her mother or anyone else in her situation. As we finish collecting the Fireflies, she wants to head to bed, but we ask her if she wants to go to the balcony. She's very hesitant for obvious reasons, feeling like she's being watched, but we reassure that we'll be here, so we head to the balcony. The apartments around her are similar to hers. They are shaped in the circular dome format, which were very common households in Russia. We ask her how she's feeling, and she's terrified and anxious, looking out of the apartments and down below, except up, and we know why. She hangs on the railing and let her legs hang. She gets ready to jump, and then as she falls, she continues her story of her online friend. She got to know someone that wasn't even him, and yet he was the one that knew the girl so well, and yet he took advantage of her naiveness by harassing her with bots, and her name starts to spread around the internet. She couldn't handle it. She feels like she's always being watched no matter where she is, and so she has one option left. We get the disturbing depiction of her lifeless body, unrecognizable. This is where you get your next achievement, second death. After the wild adventure both characters had, the girl wants to go to bed, which would mean that the play will go away as the pills take effect. However, she's not ready for you to go yet. She tells us that she doesn't want to remember the memories she had to recount, and so she asks us to tell her a bedtime story when she is trying to sleep. It's a weird request, but we don't mind it, and we tell her to close her eyes. This is where the 5 endings happen. Now, this video is already long enough, and I really don't want to get into detail on each of the endings because each of them is very obscure and has a deeper meaning that isn't really obvious. I do want to say how each of them have its own different color palette, which really fit the subject matter they want to convey in each ending. I think one of my favorite endings is the phone ending, where you see the girl texting what appears to be an automated pizza service, and she basically tells everything about her life and struggles, whilst the pizza notifies her about upcoming promotions. I don't know, I just really love it, but it's pretty sad as well. Each of the endings does have its own achievements. The shop ending gets you won't get it. Ruined Field ending gets you, is anyone there? Stairs ending has I look down. Phone ending has are we friends? And the mirror ending has everything is fine. At the end of each ending, you get to see the last scene with the girl. You will get the last achievement you need. Good night. Throughout Milk Outside, I've been keeping track of the achievements, but when you go to Steam and check the achievements, there is a text underneath each of them, and once combined in order, we get this. I died and felt something. I died again and felt nothing. Try figuring this one out, because I won't. Was anyone there? Please make it stop. You are not even trying. So that's what friendship is like. Don't you see? Control yourself. So, I think after playing both games, I think we can piece together the story of what potentially happened to her. Before any of this has happened, she seemed like a normal girl. She's very inclusive and alone most of the time, but she's always kept herself busy with her hobbies. She doesn't have any real life friends except the ones in her chat rooms, but she doesn't seem too bothered by it and does alright at school. Her home life is pretty bad. Parents constantly fighting and her having to hear it is really bad for any young person. And while she doesn't have the best relationship with them, she's somewhat close with her father, always picking her up from school and in occasion picking up Milk. She seems very distant with her mother, however, not being there at home and barely there for her. The fighting between it is mentally draining for her, and it shows when she starts having breakdowns at her school. She probably went to a therapist to seek help, but I'm not entirely sure. It's gone to the point where her father makes her quit school before she even graduates, probably moving towards homeschool to look closely at her behavior, as she starts to scratch and shout at people. This decision most likely wasn't taken lightly with her father, having now to deal with how she's gonna grow up. Before getting back, she remembered the last thing from her father was her picking up Milk. Then, at home, father jumped out of the balcony. This seriously screwed the girl mentally, and to make things worse, her online friend starts to harass her, most likely about her personal home life and her mental health, considering how close she was with him. Her mother is also forced to look after her, which both of them don't seem pleased about, with her mother seemingly being more strict with the girl. This also didn't help that because of her mental health declining, she starts to see delusions, starts feeling anxious around her surroundings, and her hearing voices. This led to her being prescribed with pills to help her with her mental health, and whilst it seems to work a bit, it still feels nothing is happening for her and causes more problems than actually healing them. At this point, she's very having many about choking herself or jumping off a balcony. But one day, when her mother asks her to get milk, she's nervous. Not only because it will be the first time she actually does something independently, but it's also a thing her father used to do. So in order to try and overcome this, she imagines you, the player, to help her out with normal tasks, and for once she starts to get better about herself. Having her to talk to someone despite not living in this world starts to make her feel better, knowing that at least she can come to us for anything. But I think something might have changed. No matter what dream we give her for the endings, she's always left to look at the hole, which could represent the dome apartment, which her father jumped in. We remembered how much she was afraid of the hole, and yet she's not reacting to it, just staring, which could mean she's finally moving on. It's not an easy thing, but it's a start, and it gives more hopeful outlook into what her future would look like if she keeps on forgetting about the negatives and improving herself. She is, however, losing the play after this event, but we did our jobs at the end, making sure that she's alright and picking up the milk.